This video was made possible with support from viewers like you. If you find this video useful, consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/FastGadgets. Welcome back, Gadgeteers. So I got this crazy idea. I decided I was going to install the Fall Creators Update on one system or another that I had. Now, normally when I do something like this, which is a major undertaking, I usually opt to use a virtual machine first and test out the update, at least to get an idea of what it's going to look like and some of the features that are going to be involved and what I can expect from the big update, whether it's Linux or Windows, to be honest. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I just thought, you know, I'm sitting here, I was watching Season 4 of Halt and Catch Fire last night, and I thought, I'm going to go ahead and install the Fall Creators Update. So I grabbed my Yoga 910, and I thought, well, I could do it through Windows Update, but I don't know about your experience, but Windows Update for me is very, very, very slow. So I opted to download the tool that you could use that will download the update for you and install it. So just a little background here. On the Lenovo Yoga 910, I had previously last April updated to the Creators Update. So that was in spring. It was not the newer Fall Creators Update. And I thought, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Keeping in mind that my Yoga 910 is a dual boot system, so it's got Fedora Linux on it and it has Windows 10 on it, and it's a UEFI BIOS, so fairly sensitive there. And of course Grub 2, which is the bootloader for Linux, was doing all the heavy lifting for selecting the boot menu, so I could do either Windows or Linux. So back in April, I installed the Creators Update and rebooted, and my computer was dead. The Grub 2 bootloader was missing, but even worse, for whatever reason, if I went into the UEFI BIOS, I found out that I was missing all of the entries, the UEFI entries for boot up to Windows and Linux. So I had a really tough road ahead of me, and what I had to do was an undertaking of 3 to 4 days. So it was disastrously difficult, and I really regret doing that Creators Update. But anyway, after about 2 to 3 days, I was able to restore the UEFI entries so that I could boot into Windows and I could boot into Linux. But the problems didn't stop there. Windows still would no longer boot because it said it would see an inaccessible boot device. So I found out I actually had to make a entry change in the UEFI BIOS to do a legacy boot so I could then boot into Windows. But before I could do that, I had to reinstall Windows. Then, no, I take it back. I didn't have to reinstall Windows. At that point, I was able to boot up to Windows, and I was able to install the UEFI drivers, and so that I could get access to the boot device again. And then I was able to shut down and change to the UEFI boot mode for Windows. And after several days, and I've got all the steps, I'm gonna have to make a video on it. It was truly a horrific undertaking. I was able to boot again in Windows and Linux. But so for a while there, my system was basically inoperable and unusable, and it did take some work. So I don't know what possessed me, why I thought I could just do the Fall Creators Update and everything would work out just fine. I went ahead and did it, downloaded the tool, and I thought, why not? Ran the installer, and immediately had problems with my internet connection, and I thought it was my modem, but the modem was fine. I found out that my router had some incorrect settings in it, and I fixed that, got my internet working after an hour or two, and was able to download Windows and run the installer. I went ahead and let the installer run, and I thought, you know, the worst thing that's going to happen is, again, the bootloader is going to be blown away and I'm going to be stuck with just Windows. But before that, I'm going to have to, you know, do a fix again. So I really thought it was going to be a huge undertaking. And the tool took about, I want to say 30 minutes to run the installation. This was after the download. So it did some work while in Windows. I rebooted and then it went through some more steps. It rebooted 3 or 4 times during the process, and my default boot in the Grub2 bootloader was Linux. So it kept booting into Linux, you know, because I wouldn't be in there to catch it, and I would come back and just boot it into Windows and it would continue the installation. It completed the installation, and I did that last reboot and I said, here it is. Now I won't have Linux again, and I'll have to do all this work to get Linux working again. And lo and behold, my entire Grub2 partition was still there, my menu was still there, and I was able to select Linux or Windows. I could not believe it. It's the first time that I can think of that I have ever installed an operating system, Windows specifically, that I've ever installed a Windows operating system after installing Linux, and it didn't destroy the Grub2 partition and force me to have to reconfigure Grub. I was so happy. So I've got my system updated to 1709, and I need to do another Windows update. I'm sure there's some updates. I think it's now up to 1711, so I'll have to check into that. But I'm here to tell you the update actually went just fine. And one of my major criticisms, aside from the fact that neither partition was bootable, Linux or Windows, with the original creators update back in spring, was that the touchpad drivers on my 910 were completely screwed up. There was no accuracy anymore. It was miserable. I had a terrible time with it. I tested that. It works wonderful. Everything seems to be working fine, and as I speak right now, I'm actually shooting this video on OBS on my Lenovo Yoga 910. I've got my Logitech C920 and my microphone here hooked up to it, my USB microphone. Everything seems to be working correctly. So what did I get for all this work? Let's take a look. Okay, so did all this work, and I'm thinking, you know, what did I get out of this? Well, I went and read an article on The Verge, and I know, of course, this is not the only authority, of course, about the Fall Creators Update, but it's the first site that came up, so I decided to check it out, because they usually hit the big things that really are going to make a difference in your life if you're a regular Windows 10 user. So I thought, okay, what did I get out of this? Well, here we go. Here's the new features in the Fall Creators Update that I had to install the Windows 10 update for. First, OneDrive files on demand. Microsoft's bringing back a placeholder files for OneDrive with the Fall Creators Update. This is actually a very cool update. It now will let you pick and choose files and folders without having to sync everything to your OneDrive. Now, the thing is, I really don't use OneDrive. I'm kind of in the middle as far as all of the cloud experiences go. I've typically used Google Drive as my main cloud storage because I can get access to it easily with the tool on both Windows, Linux, and of course Mac. Well, I have the tool on my Mac and I have the tool on my Windows machine, of course, so I can get access directly from File Explorer to my Google Drive. When I'm on the Mac, I have used iCloud, but the thing about that is I can't really get easy access to it on other platforms, and it's kind of the same thing for OneDrive. So I don't want to get stuck in a proprietary cloud service I know they're all proprietary, but I want the one that's most universal. So I usually use Google Drive. So this isn't a big thing for me, but I think that's a cool feature and worth noting if you're a OneDrive user. It's definitely something that's worth it. People integration. Now, this is interesting. So down on the taskbar here, I now have this people icon here. And I can pin contacts to the taskbar so that I can talk to them whenever, including Skype. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I really wouldn't make use of it that much. I feel like it's kind of a way of trying to duplicate some of the features that are in Messages on Mac. So that's one of the features I do like now that I've got my iPhone. I tend to link messages on my iPhone and all of my Macs. So if I get a phone call and my phone isn't around and I'm on my Mac, I can actually take the call there. I can text somebody right there. I don't know if people integration is able to do something like that with texting, but it's something I'm going to have to look into. But again, I mean, I hate to say it, why comes up because I'm really not in the Windows ecosystem enough. Again, if you're in the Windows ecosystem, I think I could see this as a decent feature. If you have people that you normally contact on a regular basis, why not set up the shortcuts with them? And again, I think they're trying to say here, kind of like Messages, you know, now you can accept calls and send and call people rather using Skype, and I'm sure they could figure out some way to do texting, and I'm sure, well, it says right here, or message, so yeah, I suppose you could. And I mean, we've already had that with Skype, really. It's just now we have more of a shortcut. But they have new emoji. That's exciting. And I'm not criticizing Windows. They're just kind of doing the, you know, let's tag along, ride the coattails of Apple and Mac with their emoji, which I care nothing about. Honestly, it's ridiculous. I'm sorry, it is. It's okay if you like it. I'm not disparaging people who like to use it, but I think emoji is simply ridiculous. And for me, it's not a method of communication I care anything about. That doesn't mean it doesn't have any value. I'm not saying that, but you won't see me being concerned about emoji beyond, you know, angry face, sad face, happy face. That's about it for me. And sometimes winky face when I crack a joke on some of the comments I get on my channel. So mixed reality, and this again is something that really isn't going to have any effect on me. It's basically Microsoft's answer to virtual reality. There aren't a whole lot of games yet using mixed reality, but if you're into virtual reality, I think this would be something you would want to explore. You do have to buy the headset, of course, but you know, I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, it might be something that will interest you. One thing I'm not sure about, and maybe one of you Windows folks out there can answer, if you buy a headset, can you use it with this mixed reality and also use it with other virtual reality environments? I'm curious about that, because then you wouldn't have to have separate headsets. I'm hoping really that hardware is hardware and you can use it either way you want, kind of like the camera I have set up here. I use it in Linux, I use it in Windows, I use it with Mac. I can switch it between devices, physical computers, quickly and easily. So I'm hoping that when you buy the headset, it will work with any hardware that you want and any virtual reality environment. This one I'm hoping is going to be cool. The Fluent design changes. Now, I haven't seen anything yet that's quote unquote Fluent, because I haven't really, I just got Windows 10 Fall Creators Update installed. I haven't had a chance to play with it too much, but looking at this image here, their sidebar they're showing here looks a little bit different. I actually checked mine out and I can see it looks a little bit different, but overall it still looks the same as it did before. I noticed tablet mode on mine is grayed out. I'm thinking the reason is I have my external monitor hooked up, which I'm using right now to have OBS on, and my camera settings are up on my external monitor. And what else do I have? I've got a microphone connected in the camera, so maybe it's cognizant of the fact that, you know, I can't actually go into tablet mode because I've got all these devices hooked up. So when I was editing with my Mac a couple days ago, I plugged in an external monitor and I had the computer on the desk, and above it was the external monitor, and I was really enjoying my edit process. So I had stuff up here that I could drag down into editing, and I kind of duplicated the same thing with my external monitor. And I know this isn't a feature of Fall Creators Update, but I guess what's important for me is that I was able to plug in a dongle to my USB-C port. I was able to plug in a monitor and it worked immediately. I was able to plug in my C920 camera and it worked immediately. I've got my blue Snowball mic and I plugged that in and it worked immediately. I was able to get into the settings for the C920 camera. My touchpad works perfectly. I have a Bluetooth mouse here that I just bought and I started using immediately, although things were a little bit strange. I want to show you. So if I do a blue, so there it says I started doing a search, right? I typed in BLU and it brought up Bluetooth and other devices, but not thinking earlier, I actually typed in the full Bluetooth, and of course now it's not going to do it, but it only had some suggestions and hints from the internet like here, and I thought that was a little bit strange. So I thought maybe I am typing Bluetooth wrong, so I started going backwards, and when I got to BLU, the device settings came up for Bluetooth, and when I clicked on it, let's see if we can get it to come up, came here, and you can see I now have the mobile mouse connected. But when I went to add a device, I thought this was kind of weird. It's like we've got all these different kinds of interfaces. So if I go into display settings, for example, whoops, interesting. So I'm not able to play over here while I've got this up. So I've got, I mean, to me, what looks like some kind of newer interface. I don't remember seeing this with Bluetooth before, and I have added my mouse numerous times. I'm going to cancel this. So we've got that interface, which looks like it's kind of newer. And then I want to go down to display adapter properties. This is what I consider the, you know, kind of Windows XP, Windows 7-ish interface. So we kind of go back here to ancient history, and then here to the Metro-like interface, and then that other interface that seems to be that newer type of interface, which we may start seeing changes. And this is one of my criticisms of Windows. It's got so many different interfaces. You know, we're just kind of starting to getting used to Metro, and now here comes Fluent Design, which is kind of gonna eclipse Metro to some degree. And you can say what you want about Macs. One of my criticisms of the Mac interface is that it's slowly, very, very slowly evolving. And if you knew what you knew with the first version of OS 10, you most likely would be fine in Mac OS, because the changes have evolved. They're not so drastic that you wouldn't understand how to use it. Windows 10, on the other hand, is a significant change, and it definitely developed Metro more. Now they've got this Fluent Design interface, so we'll see what happens. Like I say, I haven't really had a chance to use it much. So apparently Microsoft Edge has several improvements. One of the things you can do that they say here on the Verge article is they're bringing back, which again, here where we are in Windows 10 and Microsoft, they are very good at coming up with some new cool ideas and then they take them away. As an example, one of my all-time favorite coolest things in Windows 95A was when you went to select the time zone in Windows 95, it would show you a world map and you could actually click on the map and select your zone, right? I thought that was so cool. Well, in Windows 95B, they took that away. The map was still there, but it was no longer clickable. What you had to do is go into a drop-down list like you could have before in Windows 95A, select your time zone, which can be kind of irritating because the list is fairly long, and then you would see on the map what time zone you selected. So it was counterintuitive and actually took longer to do. And here they had a shortcut and then they took it away and now they're bringing it back. That's one of the problems with Microsoft. If, like I said before, with Apple and Mac OS, their changes are slow and evolutionary. Sometimes Microsoft is too quick on their changes. So they'll introduce new features and people will like them and then they'll yank them. And all of a sudden it's gone. And I'm glad they brought back this feature of site shortcuts, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know that I would use it all that much, but you know, it does make things really quick and simple. You don't have to launch a browser, then type in the URL. You can just go. One of the things I do like about Firefox is they have the most frequent sites you visit, and you can usually just click a tile in that introductory page that comes up if you have not set a home page. I'm still a little bit critical of Edge. I think performance is perfectly fine. Here they're talking about Edge performance being an issue. I don't think that's the issue at all. If I was going to choose a browser to use consistently on Windows 10, I would say it would be the Edge browser. There were some features in my router that I couldn't get working right, and I used the Edge browser and they worked fine. I couldn't get it working in Firefox or Chrome. I went to Edge and it worked fine. And the other thing is, I've got a tablet that's older. It's an Atom processor tablet, and it's got 2 gigs of memory, and Microsoft Edge works great. To me, performance-wise, maybe they're talking about actually bringing in the site, but again, even that I haven't noticed an issue. So I think performance-wise over Chrome and Firefox, if you're on a slower Windows system, you should use the Edge browser. My criticism is with extensions, but I know they're working on that too. I always like to have some type of ad blocker running, and I like to have the ability to whitelist sites. You know, there are some sites that I do want the ads on because I want that particular site to be able to get revenue, and so I like that granularity. And one of my favorite ad blockers became available for Edge. So it's getting there. It's definitely getting there, but to say that the performance isn't good is completely incorrect in my opinion. If you're on a Windows 10 system and speed is your greatest concern, I would say to use Edge. Pen and touch improvements really won't affect me at all. The laptop that I'm on, the Yoga 910, I don't believe it even can use an actual active Wacom pen, so I'm sure of it. So it's, you know, something that I'm really not going to use all that much. Well, they're talking about emoji again, and like I said before, I really don't have a use for this. This just isn't something for me. I don't use Cortana either. I usually don't use any of the so-called assistants. I've been playing around with Siri on my iPhone. You know, if I want a quick answer to a question and I'm too lazy to bring the browser up and then type in what I want in a search, and I'm pretty sure, I'm reasonably confident Siri can bring it up, I'll just ask. I did the same thing on my older Galaxy Note 4 with Google, and you know, okay Google, and they both seem to work reasonably well. Beyond that, I don't use it on a computer. I just don't see a use for it. I thought headphone and sound was fantastic on Windows 10, and on the same device, this Lenovo Yoga 910, when I boot into Linux, I hear static and some buzzing and some irritating things in the background, and I know it's not the headset, because when I boot into Windows, I get very clear, very sharp, beautiful audio, and I use a decent set of headphones. Well, I use earbuds, but same thing. They're decent. They're Pioneer earbuds, and they work really good. I really like them. I'm pretty excited to check out and see if I can get some kind of surround sound working. So I'm going to check out this Windows Sonic feature, and I'll report back in a week or two about it and let you know what I think. Now, here we're talking Task Manager GPU tracking. I thought this would be a triviality, but it's actually very interesting. I'll bring up Task Manager. Of course, because it was a newer install, I was stuck with, you know, the fewer details. I had to turn on more details. And if you cruise over to Performance and scroll down and go to GPU, you now can see your GPU's performance. And here my Intel HD graphics is actually running at 60 to 70%. Now you might ask, why is that? I think the most likely reason here is because I'm running OBS right now, and I'm using QSV Intel QuickSync video to actually capture the video, and it reduces the strain on the CPU, so I get a much more consistent capture using OBS Studio, and I don't have drop frame issues, which is nice. And so I'm using, you know, 60 to 70% of the GPU, the Intel HD 620 driver that I have, graphics 620. And, you know, even when I wiggle the mouse, I bring up about 10% or so from about the 60s to the 70s. It's not totally throttled, so I'm not too worried. What else does it show? Well, no video processing going on or decodes, and it's shared GPU memory usage, and it's using almost 1 gigabyte by the looks of it. Now I have 16 gigabytes in this particular Yoga 910. I did get the 4K resolution screen, the 16 gigabyte model, and the i7 processor, and 512 gigabytes SSD. So it's kind of an upgraded version. So I don't know if you would have less shared memory if you were using one of the lesser models. I'm not really sure, where you only have 8 gigabytes of memory, but I've got the 16. The system is definitely snappy, and it can play some of the games. I'm sure it can play quite a few of the older titles, you know, maybe 2015, 16 and older. I don't think would be an issue. The few games that I have played just fine. I've played Left 4 Dead 2, and I downloaded and installed, I always forget the name. Anyway, that other game, I couldn't remember the title. I can't believe it. Fallout 3, I haven't had a chance to test. And I'm downloading something called Warframe that I want to check out. But the other ones I have, like Team Fortress Classic and Quake, of course, are not going to hit the GPU at all. So, but there's some basic gaming. Like I can run, and Left 4 Dead 2 is an older game, but I can run it with all of the detail at maximum, and it runs just fine on this Yoga 910. So decent system for what it is. It's not like I'm going to be doing a ton of gaming on here, but I hope that the new Fall Creators Update continues the reliability with games. I can't imagine that it'll cause an issue, but it's one of the things I do like to do from time to time. All right, what do we got left? We talked about the GPU and some DPI issues. I didn't have a whole ton of issue with DPI, but I do have a 4K display, and I didn't have this blurry desktop apps issue, although older desktop applications or the older Windows interface, like if you go into Control Panel, it has a slightly more blurry look because it's like it's just not modernized. It's not set up for the newer 4K displays. They're actually just scaling it up, you know, which makes it more blurry. And to me, it's a big whatever. It's a utility. You go in, you do what you want, you get out. So what does it matter if it doesn't look as nice? Now, if there were applications that didn't look as nice that I was critical about, I would definitely say something. And there is one that I can think of, and that's some of the Adobe apps. They still don't look all that great in a 4K display, like Adobe Premiere is one of them. Dreamweaver is the other one. So I've had problems with Dreamweaver. It just doesn't look as good. It's like they really made it for 1080p as the norm, and then when you know, move to 4K, instead of it actually redrawing it, it just scales it up. So everything gets slightly blurry, and I don't consider that a problem with Windows. So that's my take on the Windows 10 Fall Creators Update. Installation, thumbs up. Installation with a dual boot system that's running Linux and not blasting away Grub 2, bam, thumbs up. Features, being, you know, more of a Linux user, I'm gonna go with, yeah, you know, they're pandering a little bit to the masses out there with emoji and silly little things like that, but you know, there's probably a ton of updates under the hood I haven't seen, so that's why I kind of say hardware support, bam, 100%, just like Windows always does. Got the webcam working immediately, the microphone dongles, all these devices, got my Bluetooth mouse working. I mean, we're talking no issues, instantaneous. My touchpad works perfectly on the Yoga 910, bam. So hardware support's really, really good. Overall experience, and hoping that it will be better in the future, bam. I think it will be. I think I'll find more things in it that I will like. And if I find things I don't like, I'll try to make notes, compile them together, and do an update, you know, a couple weeks down the road. Give me some time because I don't use Windows 10 all that much, but I'll try to get into it more and more. I'm going to go ahead now and do the Fall Creators Update on my Dell Inspiron 5675 with Ryzen 7. It's on a completely separate hard drive, so I'm not concerned really at all about that particular update. And as far as breaking my Linux dual boot, I think it won't be an issue. I feel pretty confident now. That was my main system, so that's why I use my Lenovo Yoga 910 as the guinea pig. Again, I'm recording everything right now on the Lenovo Yoga 910, so, you know, and I'm in Windows. It's that reliable. That's Windows for you. Hopefully they'll tone down the updates and things will be a little bit better. That's one of my major concerns, is when I was using Windows for work, you know, it started doing a download for updates, and it really bogged down my system. And this is an i7 with 16 gigs of RAM, and it's fully loaded, so it shouldn't be bogged down, you know, by doing that and doing the updates in the background and the downloads in the background. So that was a wee bit annoying, and it's happened multiple times, so it's kind of a turnoff. And then when I go to shut the thing down, I have to wait, you know, 10 minutes, and then when I boot up again, I've got to wait, and that's not cool for me. That's one of my main reasons for staying away from Windows 10 as much as I do. So anyway, if you're looking at the Fall Creators Update, I give it a thumbs up. And I think Microsoft really tuned their approach to this major update, and they wanted it to be a better experience for the users, and that's exactly what they did. I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a thumbs up. If you really enjoyed it, share it. Thanks again for watching. See you again.